All right. Well, I think we still have some people who are trickling in, but we can go ahead and get started. So welcome to our 2022 volunteer orientation and training. This is the third one that we've put on. We unfortunately skipped the training last year in 2021 because of COVID. And just to be safe this year, to ensure we were able to put one on, we decided to make it virtual, just because we can't predict what COVID's doing, as we all know. And people can also join from anywhere from Grand Junction, Montrose, Delta. So thank you all for joining. We're excited that you're here and excited to share our volunteer program and upcoming events with you all. So I want to start with introductions. We'll introduce the CCA staff, the Bureau of Land Management, BLM staff that's here, and then we want you all as volunteers to introduce yourselves as well. So I'll go ahead and start, and then I'll just kind of do a roll call of folks to hop on and introduce themselves so everyone knows who's up next. So my name is Sarah Brooker. I'm the operations director at Colorado Canyons Association. Part of my role here is to lead the volunteer program. We'll go much more in depth on what that entails. But yeah, I will hand it off to Annie, who is in the office with me. She's just gonna pop over.
Hi, I'm Annie. I'm the program coordinator for CCA based here in Grand Junction. I organize a lot of our land-based outreach and education events.
All right, Leslie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Who is that?
Leslie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Kaminsky. I'm the education director at Colorado Canyons Association. I work with Annie closely on working on programming on the land side, and with our new river program manager, her name is Lisa Boyko. I work with her as well on programming for the river side of CCA.
Morgan?
Hi everyone, I'm Morgan Rossway. I am the Visitor Information Associate with Colorado Canyons Association, and I work out of the Bureau of Land Management office. So if you're ever in the Visitor Center, I'm there, and I also recognize some names and faces. I help Sarah out with the AdoptATrail program and coordinating for the volunteers we have for that.
Awesome. So that's all the CCA staff that's here with us tonight. We'll move on to the BLM staffers. Helly?
Hi everyone, my name is Angelica Spencer. I'm the Natural Resource Specialist and Education Coordinator for McInnes Canyons and Dominguez Escalante National Conservation Areas. So I work out of the Grand Junction Field Office, and I see some new faces on here today and some people coming back this year. So thanks for joining us.
Iris?
Hello, my name is Iris Salamanca. I'm the Volunteer and Visitor Service Coordinator at the Bureau of Land Management Grand Junction Field Office. I work with Helly a lot, but yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this all now and getting more involved with volunteers and CCA. So I think it's gonna be great.
And Robin?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Robin Lewis. I'm an outdoor recreation planner in the Montrose BLM office. I primarily work in the Gunnison Gorge and Dominguez Escalante, and work a lot with Colorado Canyons Association and all the great volunteers that we get through CCA and lots of other partnerships that we have. Look forward to this evening and supporting Sarah with any questions or needs from folks. So we'll be on for the whole time.
Great. So those are the BLM staff members joining us this evening. We'll talk more about our partnership here in a few minutes. So I'd like all the volunteers to introduce themselves. You can just say your name, where you're coming from this evening, and then if you are a new volunteer to CCA or if you volunteered with us before. So I'll just go down the list that I have here. We'll start with Doug.
Hi, Doug Donato. I live in Fruita, Colorado, and I guess I've been volunteering for maybe not quite a year.
Awesome, thanks, Doug. All right, we have Paula next.
I'm Paula Morton. I live here in Grand Junction, and I'm new to looking into volunteering with CCA.
Great, welcome. All right, Stephen Williams.
Hi, I'm new to Grand Junction and I'm a new volunteer for CCA and I'm looking forward to help out with everything.
Great, welcome. All right, we have Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry Ahern. I've lived here in Grand Junction since 2000, and I'm an AdoptATrail volunteer since September 2020. And I'm also known as the Grinch who steals Christmas.
Terry is one of our highest ranking volunteers in terms of hours and everything that she's done for us. So she is a great resource for any of the new volunteers. All right, we have
Sarah.
Erin next.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I work with Metcalf Archaeology here in Grand Junction, and I've helped out with nature knowledge days mostly the last several years. I think 3 or 4 out of the 5 years I've been over here. So glad to be back.
Great, thanks, Erin. All right, Bob Fisher. Bob Fisher.
He's muted.
Maybe we'll come back to him. Maybe he stepped out for a sec. All right, Celia.
Hi, I'm Celia. I go by she, her pronouns. I am currently based in Fruita, Colorado, and this is my first time looking into volunteering with CCA, though I have been a conservation volunteer quite a bit in the past.
Great, thanks. All right, we have Dina.
Hi, I'm Dina. I am new to Montrose and I am a new volunteer to CCA.
Great, welcome. All right, Maddie.
My name is Maddie Rain. I am new to the Grand Junction area and looking into volunteering with CCA, so happy to be here tonight. Thanks for having us.
Welcome. All right, Sandra. Oh, Sandra, you're muted.
Hi, my name is Sandra Tinsman and I live in downtown Grand Junction. I've been enjoying the canyons for years and supporting them financially. And I'd like to get more into volunteering besides picking up after other people's dogs. I'd like to do something a little more concrete.
Understandable. We have those opportunities for you. All right, do we have Bob on yet? Oh, it looks like maybe he left. All right, well, as more people come in, they can just hop on and join us whenever. But once again, thank you all for joining and we'll get into the presentation. If you could all go on mute for the time being, we'll have a chance for questions at the end of my section before we go into the education breakout session. And then you can also use the chat box and chat function as well if you'd like to. All right, so it sounds like a lot of you are new to CCA, so I wanted to give everyone a background on what CCA does. So we were first founded in 2007 as Friends of McInnes Canyon. So we were a friends group specifically to the BLM for McInnes Canyons NCA out in Fruita. In 2011, we expanded to capture Dominguez Escalante and Gunnison Gorge as well. And so now with the 3 NCAs, we foster community stewardship, education, and awareness for the national conservation lands. As you all probably know, we're really lucky to have these 3 NCAs all within an hour drive of one another. I'm sure you've all enjoyed recreating, at least on one of those NCAs. We'll go into more about what an NCA is here in the next slide. But more about our mission. How do we actually achieve our mission of stewardship, education, and awareness? So every year we have youth education events on both the land and the river. In a normal non-COVID year, we get about 3,000 kids out on the land each year. We do that through our group field trips. So we work with the school districts to offer field trips to students free of cost. 3rd through 7th grade with other standalone events as well. So we'll talk more about what those events are. Our signature events, as you maybe have heard of or attended in the past, are Nature Knowledge Days, Escalante Field Experience, and Cottonwood Days. We also have a river program that gets a lot of youth out on the river. Last year, we got about 550 students out on rafting trips, which is really awesome because a lot of those students had never been on the river before, or a raft or camping. So lots of new experiences, and it just makes such an impact on the lives of these students. We also have our river and land stewardship events. So this is a lot of what the volunteer events are that we offer. I'm not going to go into too much detail on those now, just because we'll be going into a lot of detail on that later. But essentially, the BLM will come to us with projects that they need help on, that they need volunteers for, and we'll bring volunteers out and we'll clean up trash, we'll do habitat restoration, river cleanups, all sorts of things. And then lastly, we have our community outreach and engagement. So every year we do community hikes in the NCAs. We are currently doing our 2022 lecture series, which hopefully some of you are signed up for. Just other fun ways to get the public connected to their NCAs and public lands on the Western Slope. So I've already mentioned the NCAs and our partnership with the BLM. I'm going to hand it over to our BLM folks on the call to talk more about what the NCAs are and the partnerships we have with both the Grand Junction Field Office and Uncompahgre Field Office. Helly, do you want to start the conversation here?
Yeah, I can start off and explain a bit about what the National Conservation Areas are and how CCA helps us achieve those goals. And Iris, Robin, if there's anything you would like to add from your point of view, that'd be great. So National Conservation Areas, what are these? So these are lands designated by Congress to conserve, protect, enhance, and manage these public lands that feature exceptional intrinsic values for the benefit and enjoyment of present and future generations. So these values include archaeology, cultural, educational, historical, natural, scenic, scientific, so many different values that are encompassed in this. Across 10 states, there are 17 national conservation areas and 10 similarly designated lands. But here in Colorado, we only have 3, and that's the Gunnison Gorge NCA, McInnes Canyons NCA, and Dominguez Escalante NCA. And these NCAs have been around for a while. Gunny Gorge, I believe, was designated in 1999. McInnes was designated in 2000, and Dominguez Escalante was designated in 2009. So these NCAs have been around for a while, and CCA has definitely helped us achieve a lot of our goals, especially with education. We get thousands of kids out a year prior to COVID, but we're still reaching numbers now during COVID, and we've learned how to offer a hybrid of virtual and in-person events. They help us with some of our scientific research through our citizen science programs, and they help us get a ton of work done through volunteer projects that they help us organize. So big thank you to all of you for being here. There's no way we could get this work done without you. Volunteers are an important part of this partnership, so thanks.
Iris or Robin, do you have anything you want to add?
No, just echo Helly's words of appreciation, and just, these are offices that manage beyond the National Conservation Area, millions of acres of public land, and we do that generally with a pretty skeleton permanent staff. In the Uncompahgre field office, we have about 20 permanent staff members. I can't speak for Grand Junction, but probably not too many more than that. So between seasonals, interns, and of course volunteers, that's how we get a lot of the work on the ground accomplished. And that's really the work that, you know, is what we see, it's what matters, and is a lot of times really that hard work. So again, just want to express those words of gratitude. But otherwise, I think Kelly really did a great job explaining the NCAs and how special those lands are and how lucky I think we are to have them in Colorado. I can certainly speak on a personal level about how much I enjoy the national conservation areas and love every day getting to work for them.
Great, thanks, Robin. Iris, anything to add?
Yeah, just huge thank you. There's no way we could do it without volunteers, and it's just awesome the work you guys really help us get done. So thank you.
Great. So out of all of our organized volunteer events, we do have a BLM representative there as well as a CCA staff member. So you very well might meet some of these folks in person. And yeah, we're so grateful of the partnership we have with BLM. They're definitely by far our biggest partners. And you know, we're working with them every day. So all right. So now more into the volunteer program. Oh, before I do that, actually, I have a poll that I wanted to put up for participants to answer. All right, so hopefully you all just saw a poll pop up on your screen. I wanted to see what national conservation area you want to volunteer in. So McInnes Canyon, Dominguez Escalante, or Gunnison Gorge. We'll give it a few minutes to get your answers, a few seconds. All right, we'll give it about 15 more seconds. All right. So we had 10 of you all who wanted to volunteer in McInnes Canyon, 7 in Dominguez Escalante, and 6 in Gunnison Gorge. So that's awesome. We have volunteer opportunities in all 3 of these NCAs, and hopefully you can try volunteering in each one. All right. So going into our volunteer program and what we do, I wanted to share some totals that we had for 2021 to show you, you know, as Helly and Robin and Iris said, how crucial volunteers are to achieving our mission. So we had 127 volunteers help us out on various programs in 2021. That contributed to 1,892 volunteer hours, which is a ton of time. And we did that over the span of 13 group events, as well as other standalone events, such as our AdoptATrail program, and you know, some other things that crop up. So the next several slides, I'm just kind of breaking out the different areas of our volunteer program. So we have different roles that volunteers can fill within what we do as CCA. We're going to start out with our land education volunteers. So because of COVID, in 2020 and 2021, we could not run any of our large group field trips. The last year that we ran all of our field trips as normal is 2019. In a normal year, that looks like having nature knowledge days, which is our field trip for 3rd grade students in McInnes Canyons. I think we got probably around 1,000 kids outside for nature knowledge days in the spring each year. That's going to be this picture up here in the right corner. That was nature knowledge days from 2019. We have typically Escalante field experience that also happens in the spring. That's 7th graders. I don't have a picture of that one on here, but similar event. And then this picture in the center here is from Cottonwood Days in 2019 down in Gunnison Gorge. So for all of these group field trips, they're station-based field trips. We have kids come out for the morning or the afternoon, and we have various stations set up around the NCA on the trail, alongside the trail. And we'll have volunteers or BLM staff at each station leading the students through a various facet of the NCA. So at Nature Knowledge Days, for example, we have a station on birds, we have a station on tamarisk, a station on ranching. And so the kids will rotate through these stations led by volunteers and learn all about their public lands in a really holistic way. At Cottonwood Days, it's all focused around how the Gunnison River interacts with the landscape. So those stations are really fun and hands-on. This picture here is a fly tying station where kids actually can tie their own fly and take it home with them. We have a station on macroinvertebrates where kids can look through a microscope and see all the bugs, which is really fun. And so we rely on volunteers to help lead those stations and educate the kiddos on their public lands. Annie and Leslie are going to go into a lot more detail about our education events later on, and then offer an additional breakout session at the end of this training about our education events. So more to come on that. In addition to the field trips I just talked about, we also have some standalone field trips and events that happen throughout the year. This last picture here on the left side is from our Earth Science Knowledge Days. That actually happened in 2020, right before COVID hit. That was just a standalone field trip we put on that was all about the geology and paleontology of the NCA. So we have things pop up throughout the year as well that we often need volunteers for as well. So the next few slides are going to be our land stewardship events. The first one of those being trash cleanups. I know it's not the most glamorous of volunteer jobs, but it is always so needed. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of trash out in the NCAs and on our public lands. So, you know, it's always so helpful, so impactful for volunteers, for anyone to go out and clean that up. So we always have a Rabbit Valley Highway cleanup in the fall. That's this picture over here on the left. CCA actually adopted a section of the highway outside of Rabbit Valley, about a 2-mile stretch of highway that sees a ton of litter. We always end up collecting probably 30 or 40 bags of trash in just a half-mile section because we never have enough time to make it all the way through. This picture down here with the refrigerator, that was our Peach Valley cleanup from last year. Unfortunately, Peach Valley is one of the areas that sees a lot of dump sites. People will just go out and, you know, dump a trailer full of trash. And so we always need groups of volunteers to help remove those larger sites of trash. We had a National Public Lands Day event in the potholes to clean up trash. And then last year, we did our first backpacking volunteer cleanup, which was really exciting. We did that in Big and Little Dominguez Canyon. That's out of the Bridgeport Trailhead. Along with picking up trash, it was also to disperse some of the campsites and firings out there. So Bridgeport has just exploded with use over the past couple of years. And with that, you know, there's a lot of firings that have popped up that really shouldn't be there. You know, there doesn't need to be that many. So volunteers went out for an overnight backpacking trip and cleaned up trash and dispersed firings. And we hope to have more backpacking opportunities for volunteers in the future. So those are our trash cleanups. We also have our AdoptATrail volunteers that you've probably heard referenced a couple times already. Morgan is coordinating this program currently. This is in all 3 NCAs, and it's not a group event. It's something that volunteers can go out and do on their own time. So we have about 20 AdoptATrail volunteers right now in all 3 NCAs. Volunteers are assigned a trail to adopt every month, And anytime during the month on their own time, they can go out and they hike the trail, they clean up any trash that they come across, and then they also report back any, vandalism they come across, any trails that have been washed out, anything of note. We do have a whole nother AdoptATrail training video that we require our AdoptATrail volunteers to watch before coming onto the program. However, our McInnes Canyons and Dominguez Escalante AdoptATrail program is currently full. We're pretty maxed out on volunteers in those two NCAs for the time being. That's not to say spots won't open up, but we have a lot of interest in this program from our volunteers more in the Grand Junction region. However, we could definitely use more volunteers in Gunnison Gorge. We have a couple of folks that do a great job on those trails, but are looking for more volunteers who'd like to adopt trails in Gunnison Gorge. And then lastly, with land stewardship, we have our habitat restoration events. These vary year to year in what the projects end up being. Usually the BLM comes to us with projects that need to get done out on the land. And then we'll bring out the volunteers and help get that project done. So we've done some really cool projects in the past. We do a Lop and Scatter event in Gunnison Gorge every year on sage grouse habitat. That's one of our recurring habitat restoration events. Last year, we had a sagebrush planting series of events up in Black Ridge Canyons Wilderness and McInnes Canyons where the Seaver Fire swept through. That was a really cool opportunity where volunteers helped plant baby sagebrush seedlings. I think we got about 600 planted. So yeah, those will change from year to year. I'll be going over the opportunities we have coming up, but they're always really, really fun events. And it's just always so satisfying to be restoring the habitat that we recreate on and that the wildlife use and depend on. So another facet of our volunteer program is going to be our river stewardship events. Lisa, our new river program manager, couldn't be here tonight. She just came on about a month ago, but she will be leading most of these river stewardship events. We always do 2 river cleanups every year. We do one on the Colorado River along Ruby Horse Thief. That's an overnight cleanup. That's this top picture you see with the people in the pink vests. Volunteers typically take their own boat. We have a couple of openings on our CCA boat, but it's typically an event where volunteers will bring their own boat, will kind of caravan down the river and clean up trash along the way. I think it was 2020, we pulled an entire couch out of the river. So we always find a lot of, interesting objects. You can see in this photo over here on the left, we have Ethan, our river guide from last year, sitting on a toilet. That was from our Lower Gunnison River cleanup in August. So that was through Dominguez Escalante NCA. That's just a one-day cleanup that we offer. Same structure, volunteers bring their own boats, and then we just pick up trash as we find it. And then, if you don't have a boat, I just wanted to mention there are also other ways that you can get involved in river stewardship. A lot of the sections along the river can be accessed by land. So down here on the right, you'll see a picture of our cottonwood wrapping event in Gunnison Gorge last February. This area was once full of tamarisk. The tamarisk were removed, and then we planted all of these cottonwood and wrapped them in wire to prevent the beavers from cutting them down. I think we planted, probably close to 100 cottonwoods that day right along the river. And yeah, we're excited to check back and see how those did, but just wanted to say there are other river stewardship opportunities, even if you don't have a boat. And then lastly, kind of the last part of our volunteer program is our tabling and outreach. As I mentioned, and as I'm sure you've all picked up on just recreating in our public lands over the past couple of years, things have really exploded. We're seeing more visitation than ever. You know, people want to get outside and visit these trails. You know, they recognize how awesome the NCAs are, which is great. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the visitors, you know, are keeping responsible recreation in mind, that they are aware of the leave no trace ethics, that they are prepared for, you know, the trail that they're about to hike. So we've started trailhead tabling events at some of our busier trailheads, the main one being Bridgeport. Bridgeport has really seen an explosion in visitors over the past couple of years. I think it was 2020 where 127 vehicles were counted on a Saturday in May. So with that, we want to try to do what we can to talk to these visitors as they're recreating, to give them the maps they need, to give them the LMT information they need, and to teach them about the lands that they're visiting. So volunteers have been a really helpful way to achieve this mission, and we'll have volunteers who sign up for these tabling events and can be the ones interacting with the public and teaching them about the lands. And then, you know, we also have other outreach events pop up every now and then. I just put a picture up of our lecture series and one of our birding hikes. If you are an expert in any area, birds, bugs, rocks, whatever, you know, let us know. And we're always looking to lead more community hikes and events where we engage with volunteers to be the leader. All right, so before we move on to our upcoming events and dates, I wanted to do another poll. Now that I've just told you about all of our different program areas, I just want to get a sense of what the folks on here are interested in. So go ahead and send in your answers. Give it another 15 seconds. All right. So it looks like most of you all are interested in our stewardship events, which is awesome. We have a lot of those. 5 interested in outreach and 3 interested in education. All right. So now we're going to move on to talking about what our 2022 volunteer calendar actually looks like. Introduce you to some of the events that we have planned on the calendar and tell you a little bit more about those and how you can get involved and signed up. All right, so we have our land education events. I'm going to let Annie come over here and take over the presentation for a few minutes.
Okay, so as Sarah mentioned, we have some annual field trip events that we rely heavily on volunteers for. Our education season this year is looking a little bit different than typical years, just because we needed to plan very conservatively this year to prevent any cancellations, keep everyone safe. That's the students and all of the staff and volunteers that are going to help us actually make these events happen. Sarah's got a fancy mouse that I'm not used to using. So with those field trips this spring, we have 4 days of nature knowledge days. That is our 3rd grade field trip. We're doing that in McInnes Canyons this year in the Devil's Canyon Trailhead. If any of you have participated in that before, I know at least one person on here has. We've changed it up a little bit. We're going to have much smaller groups this year. So really just individual classes, in a couple cases, 2 classes together coming. But really the maximum number of kids that are going to be at those days are close to like 35 students. We've combined some of the stations. All of this is some stuff we'll go over in the education specific training. We also have Cottonwood days this year. just one afternoon of it. This is typically a fall field trip, and it was planned to happen last fall and was canceled pretty last minute. So we wanted to be able to offer that to the Delta County students who were supposed to come out. And so we have a group coming from Paonia on May 11th. So we will be looking for volunteers for that. Again, like Nature Knowledge Days, it's going to be a slightly different version of that event. But we are then hoping to do it as normal in the fall. So it typically happens like the last week of September. And we'll hopefully be getting a lot more students back out for that program. That's at Cottonwood Grove Campground in Gunnison Gorge. It's a really beautiful spot. And like Sarah mentioned, a lot of very engaging hands-on activities focused on water and the way that affects the landscape and also people's connection to the land. We have one education outreach opportunity this year so far, which is Dinosaur Day at the Dinosaur Journey Museum. So they have gone back to putting that event on in person. That's on a Saturday in June from 9 to 4. And we're looking for someone to potentially do the tabling for that. So stand at a CCA booth and educate visitors about the paleontology resources that are found in all 3 NCAs. So we actually do have dinosaur fossils and cool like skin impressions and all kinds of super cool dinosaur stuff in all 3 NCAs. This would be great for someone who has knowledge and experience like that. But I also do have some information and resources that I would be able to provide to the person who potentially signs up for that. The roles for youth education programs, so those field trips, as Sarah kind of mentioned, would be leading a station where we provide you the curriculum, a sample script. We really equip you well to be able to lead that station. You could also just be kind of a floater who's helping out with the event in general, making sure things are happening smoothly, keeping track of the time for us. And then maybe student management. So you might be paired with a group and you're helping just keep those students in check as they rotate through the different activities. If you're interested in these education volunteer opportunities, stick around for the second half of this training and we'll go more in depth about the actual programs and what we're looking for from education volunteers. I'm going to go back to my desk now.
Awesome. So those were all of our spring education events we have planned. We will have more opportunities in the fall. So just stay tuned for those. We'll have a whole nother batch of events that we'll need volunteers for. Helly, did you want to chime in?
Do you see me wiggling in my seat? When I started with the education programs, I had no idea what these stations were, what they look like, how complicated it would be to present at the material at these stations. And CCA and BLM have worked together to create some awesome curriculum for these events, and it's pretty straightforward and it's relatively pretty easy to present for these education events. They're 3rd and 4th graders. They don't ask crazy hard questions. So if you think this may be something that you are interested in helping with, but you're a little nervous, if we have some room, there may be a chance for you to come and shadow and kind of see what these events are about and if it be something that you're interested in assisting with. But they're really fun. The kids get really excited and very into these events. So they're a lot of fun. And you get a free dino t-shirt from the museum if you help with Dino Days. So we'll also have a BLM table there, but I love my dino shirts. They're a lot of fun. That was all, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. All right, we'll move on to our upcoming stewardship events. All right, so first, our river stewardship events that we have scheduled. As I mentioned, we do these 2 every year. We've been doing them for, gosh, I don't know, 5+ years in a row at this point. So we have our Ruby Horse Thief cleanup that we've recently partnered with Odell Brewing on. They're great partners and just join us on the event. That is scheduled for July 16th through 17th. So Ruby Horse Thief, if you're not familiar, that's in McInnes Canyons NCA on the Colorado River. It's about a 25-mile stretch of river. So it is typically done as an overnight or even multi-day trip. We're going to do it as an overnight trip. And it's always really fun. Volunteers typically bring their own boats, and we'll just all go down the river together and clean up the trash from this really loved section of river that always needs attention. And then we'll also have a Gunnison River cleanup or stewardship event. We don't have this one planned out quite yet, but that's going to be in August 2022. If you're interested, we will have an option to put your name on a list. And once we do have more information on that, we'll let you know. And I'll just say right now, I meant to say this earlier, but we will have a sign up form that I'll give you all at the end of this, so you can actually sign up for some of these events and get your name on the list. And then our land stewardship events that are coming up, we have our Codell Canyon fence removal on March 21st. I think a couple of you are already signed up for that. I think we have a couple spots left on this one, but it is pretty full. We're partnering with backcountry hunters and anglers on this. So we're both bringing a group of volunteers out to Codell Canyon and McInnes Canyons and taking down about 0.6 of a mile of a 7-strand barbed wire fence. So a fence that's very unfriendly to wildlife. We've seen, deer get stuck in that. So we're taking that, removing that from the landscape. So that'll be a really great event. If you are interested, we might have a couple spots open on that. If you don't get to go to that event, we are going to have some additional follow-up dates to that. We're waiting for this first event to happen to see how many more dates we have to schedule, but there probably will be another spring date for that, and then potentially more into the fall. We have our Peach Valley Earth Day cleanup scheduled for Saturday, April 23rd. That's going to be a half-day event in the morning down in Gunnison Gorge, NCA. I showed you that picture earlier of the dump site we were at last year that we were cleaning up. We had a dump trailer come out. We had about 15 volunteers, pretty large dump site, and we completely filled the trailer full of trash. So it was really great to get that off of the landscape, and just the before and after picture was just, so great to look at, seeing that landscape restored. So that's April 23rd. You can go ahead and sign up for that now if you're interested. As I mentioned, we have our AdoptATrail program. Currently, we only are accepting volunteers for Gunnison Gorge. If you are interested in one of the other NCAs, you can get on the wait list for those if we do have spots that open up. But yes, please let us know if you'd like to adopt a trail in Gunnison Gorge. We'd love to have you on for our program. And then we're going to have a lot more stewardship events to come. As I said, these kind of pop up as needed, so we don't always know what these events are going to be months in advance. Fall is a really busy time for our stewardship events. Fall weather is usually a little bit more predictable than spring, not as hot as summer. So we're going to have a National Public Lands Day event or two in end of September. We're probably going to have a native seed planting event out in Dominguez Escalante in October. We'll have our Rabbit Valley trash cleanup, lots of other things that are gonna be coming out as opportunities. So while we don't have these available for sign up right now, I think all of you on here are signed up for our volunteer newsletter. So you'll receive these events as we have them open for registration. And then lastly, we have our outreach tabling opportunities. We're going to be tabling at the Bridgeport Trailhead in May. We have some busy Saturdays on our calendars that we're hoping to get out there and table. So we're looking for volunteers on May 14th and May 28th. As I said, this will just be probably a 9 to 12 session of being out at the Bridgeport Trailhead at our table with a BLM representative. We'll have maps to share with the public, and then just be talking to folks about leave no trace, and whatever questions they bring to us. We will probably have other tabling opportunities as well throughout the year. If you get on our list of outreach volunteers, we'll make sure to send you those opportunities as they pop up. But May 14th and 28th for now. I will say that being a tabling volunteer does require additional training that can be scheduled on an individual basis. Basically, you'll just come into our office for an hour and kind of get the rundown from me on what is expected from you. I'll give you some materials to help you out, answer questions. So if you are interested in that, we'll schedule an additional training. And then, if you have any other skills or expertise that hasn't been mentioned here, let us know. We're always looking for people to come out and help us however they can. And we're always so appreciative of the folks that have, different skills and expertise to lend to our community. All right, just a couple more slides here before we get to the sign-up form. Now that we've talked about all of our different programs and events, I just wanted to go over some pretty basic volunteer expectations that we have at all of these events and programs. Nothing crazy here. I'm sure, you all are already aware of these things, but just to reiterate, for all of our events, we expect you to be on time. If you are running late, please communicate that to the CCA staff member who's running the event. This is really important for our education events. These events are on a really tight schedule. The school districts are bringing students out on a bus. They have a 3-hour time slot to do these events. So it's really helpful if, people show up on time. We want our volunteers to be prepared. Of course, all of our volunteer events happen outside, and we all know that weather can get a little bit crazy and unpredictable here, but definitely checking the weather ahead of time so you're prepared with the appropriate layers, and then just the appropriate PPE and attire that you'll need for the event as well. And also, we just want you to know what you signed up for. Some of our events, we try to offer as many different roles in our events as we can. Some are going to be a little bit more physical, some are, don't have any physical requirements. Just be aware of the event that you signed up for, and please ask any questions beforehand. Be professional. We do work with kids and members of the community, so we want you to use appropriate language and, of course, treat everyone with respect. As I already mentioned, ask questions if you're confused about anything. If you need clarification, please let us know. And then lastly, we'd love for you to give feedback. Let us know how we can improve. If we did a great job, let us know. It really helps us plan for our future programs and events. We also have our volunteer handbook, which is a comprehensive overview of all of our volunteer programs, expectations, procedures. It's, if you're a new volunteer, if you're a recurring volunteer, it's just a great document to get you a little bit more up to date on the program and what we expect of our volunteers. So I think Annie has put that in the chat box for you to look at on your own time. It's also on the volunteer page of our website. Wanted to mention just a couple additional trainings here. I'll first mention our Leave No Trace awareness course and give you a little background on that. So we're currently working with Leave No Trace to certify McInnes Canyons and Dominguez Escalante as gold standard sites. So I think currently there's only one BLM site that's been designated as a gold standard site. And so we're really excited to have the chance to work with LNT to get McInnes Canyons and Dominguez Escalante certified as well. So with that, there are various steps to this process to become certified as a gold standard park. Part of that is making sure staff and volunteers are familiar with the Leave No Trace principles. So this is an online training that takes about 30 minutes. And will just help you refresh the LNT principles if you already know them. If you don't know them, they'll help you familiarize yourself with what those 7 LNT principles are. So you can go to the hyperlink that Annie just put in the chat and do that on your own time. If you do this course, please email your certificate to me so I can have that on file. Helly, do you want to add anything?
We're really excited about this. As Sarah mentioned, there's only one BLM site in the country that has the gold standard status, and that is a lighthouse out on the East Coast. So this is a big deal for us, and yeah, we're all trying to get our trainings in and try and communicate LNT to the best of our ability to the community. So making sure we're all trained up on that would be great.
Awesome. If you do have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. But yeah, visit that link. And like I said, it's a pretty short course. It'll just help you refresh those LNT principles. And I also wanted to mention our BLM Volunteer River Ranger program. This is a program that the Grand Junction Field Office has put together this year to help steward the Ruby Horse Thief section of the river. Iris has done a really great job with getting this program pulled together and is in the training phase of the program. But essentially she's looking for volunteers who are already pretty familiar with the Ruby Horse Thief stretch of river that can go out to the boat launch and talk to visitors about you know, the permit requirements, what they need to take on the river with them, making sure everyone's prepared, and then also looking for folks that can actually do the stretch of river. So Iris has all the information about this. If you're interested in being a volunteer river ranger, reach out to her. Iris, is there anything you wanted to add about this program?
I think you covered for the most part, like what, you know, is the goal is, yeah, if you can't really do, you know, on the river patrols, you can always just do ramp assistance. You know, one of the big things is always education. That's how we can really take care of our lands. Good thing that you guys also mentioned the Leave No Trace awareness course, because that's also one of my requirements to be a Ruby Horse Thief volunteer ranger. Again, we definitely want to push for that gold standard. And since we would like, you know, you people to be touching base at this point with all of our visitors, you know, communication is key, without a doubt. And so it's a good way to be able to provide uniform, you know, knowledge, education to all the volunteers, make them familiar with this and be able to provide that. So I'm, you know, really excited. Had our first launch this last weekend. I was over the moon excited by the report I got back. It was so much more than I could expect, and I couldn't be more appreciative of the volunteers. And I think this program is going to be wonderful. And you get to overnight camp. There is an administrative campsite, so that's always a plus. You can camp on Ruby Horse Thief on our administrative site. We just acquired this land. It's called Crow Bottom. So I can provide so much more information, and I'm happy to. Please feel free to reach out to me.
Great, thanks, Iris. All right, and now if you're not already convinced on why you should volunteer for CCA, I just wanted to give you a few more reasons. You know, hopefully through all of these different programs, you've learned that you can really give back to your community and back to your public lands through volunteering for CCA. You can also gain valuable trainings and you can learn new skills. You know, maybe you've never taken down or put up a fence before. If you come out and volunteer with us, that's a new skill that you'll have, and you never know when that's going to come in handy. Our volunteer events are a great way to connect with your community. Our group volunteer events, usually there's anywhere from 10 to 20 other volunteers. You're spending, you know, a whole day with those folks, and you can really meet some cool people. And then you'll also be recognized for your service as a CCA volunteer. We host an annual volunteer appreciation event at the end of every year, which is always really fun. And then I always try to bring, you know, donuts, coffee, other treats to all of our events to make sure everyone has enough sugar. All right, so before we get to the sign up form and the second half of the education training, do we have any questions? Please feel free to turn your mute off and yeah, ask any questions that have come up.
I'm curious, for those of us that don't have rafts, if we can join people that do.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do typically have 2 or 3 spots on our CCA boat. Those are kind of first come, first serve. So if you do reach out to us, you know, early on, we can probably get you on a CCA boat. Otherwise, we're happy to connect you to some of the other volunteers who do have a boat and see if they would, you know, let you go on their boat. I'm trying to think if that has happened in the past. I think because the past couple of years have, you know, COVID has been such a thing. We were trying to keep people as their, you know, family or household groups. But in the future, I think that could definitely be encouraged.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can stick folks on BLM boats as well if they're co-sponsored things. It'd be great to get you out, Sandra.
Great. I have rafted, but never independently. So I would enjoy that. Thank you.
Great. Other questions? Comments? Anything to share with the group? All right. Well, if you do have any questions that come up after this presentation or anything that you just rather email me, please feel free to reach out. Give me an email, give me a call, and I'll get those answered for you. So I wanted to give everyone a few minutes, take a break and sign up for some of these events we've been talking about. You can also find our contact information down here with emails. This is our office number. So make sure to jot that down. Annie just put the link to the sign up form in the chat box. So go ahead, open that up. You know, you don't have to fill that out now, but in the next couple of days, just fill out your interests and we'll make sure to get you signed up for some of these events we've been talking about. And so after this, we'll take a couple minutes here just as a short break. And then we'll have Annie and Leslie come on and do our education breakout session for those volunteers who are interested in education events. We encourage anyone to stick around for this, even if you don't know if you want to, you know, volunteer for an education event. It's a really great material to learn and hear. So, well, let's see, it is 6:28 right now. I'll give it a couple minutes. You know, stand up if you need to, and then we'll start our education breakout session around 6:30. If you aren't interested in sticking around, you're free to leave the meeting whenever. So yeah, and then also during this break, feel free to ask any questions that come to mind as well. If you are leaving, before the education session, thank you all so much for attending this training. I hope you gain some valuable information from it, and we really hope to see you at one of our volunteer events coming up.
Thank you.
Sarah, just wanted to make sure if you saw my message in the chat, just for future possibility.
Terry, can you repeat that? We were doing a little switch of whose computer had the volume on.
You bet. I sent a message to Sarah and Morgan. I've been leading hikes in the monument with the blessing of the Education and Interp Department for seniors. So I've done 3 for the Montrose Senior District, and I'm going to do, and 1 more is scheduled for this month, and 2 for Fruita seniors with the new girl over there, Katie Scala. So if you guys ever just have a need, somebody in the community wants a group-led hike for seniors, citizens, gray hairs like me, feel free to reach out and, I'll bone up on that particular trail. I bring pictures, I do safety messages, I do land acknowledgements. So I'm happy to do that. The monuments wave their blessing. I've been a volunteer there since April 2006. And so they've watched me up my game a little bit. So I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Terry.
Thanks. Good night. Oh,
good night. No, I was just going to get started with education stuff. So for those of us who are still on this meeting, it looks like we have a couple education volunteers with us. We're just going to talk a bit more. I'm going to start out with the specific events coming up, and then I'll hand it over to Leslie to talk a little bit about just kind of what it takes to be an education volunteer and some of the ideas we want to get across about that. So with those programs that I mentioned, we have coming up this spring. Nature Knowledge Days is our annual 3rd grade field trip. In the past, we have expanded that to also happen in Dominguez Escalante NCA, but this year we're just going to be doing Devil's Canyon in McInnes Canyons. There are 8 typical stations for that event, and this year we have actually paired them up into groups of 2 so that there will be 4 stations for the students to rotate through. It's going to give us more time at each station to get the material across and deliver it really well. So for those of you who have done this event in the past, it is going to be different, but we're prepared to, support you in getting ready for this year's version of it. For those of you who haven't done it before, it is 3rd grade students from across District 51. They're about 8 or 9 years old. A lot of energy, a lot of excitement, and we really, I actually have not done this event before, but Helly has, and some of the other staff on this call. It's very fun. It's a great way to get the kids engaged in their local public lands. For a lot of them, it's the first time they've been on public land or been to such a nearby space, and they've, we try to get the message across that all of us are public lands owners, and also highlight some cool features of that landscape. So we're going to be doing biological soil crust and geology as one combined station, archaeology and ranching as one combined station, predator-prey dynamics and birds as the 3rd combined station, and the final one will be cottonwood trees and tamarisk. So the Palisade Insectary comes out to run the tamarisk station. They actually bring little tamarisk beetles. We'll have CCA staff, BLM staff, one woman from the Insectary, and then hopefully some great community volunteers running those stations. The dates were on a previous slide, but we have 4 total days, and those are all in April. We have, I believe, 6 different like time slots. So there are 2 days that only have 1 session happening, and the 2 other days are both morning and afternoon. You can volunteer for the full day, morning and afternoon session, or you could just do 1 session. We're really open to whatever folks prefer. As I mentioned earlier, you could be leading a station. You could also just be helping with the general flow of the event. Cottonwood Days is our annual 6th grade field trip. Those students are about 11 or 12. So they really come with a deeper understanding of things already. But again, if they haven't, been part of our field trips before, this also might be a student's first time out on their local public land. It happens at the Cottonwood Grove Campground in Gunnison Gorge National Conservation Area. It's a beautiful spot right along the water. Again, we've modified this version for this year, just since it's spring when we don't typically do it, and also trying to keep everyone safe. So the stations this year will be Web of Life, People of the River, which actually Dina, who's on the call, is going to be helping us out with. The Ute Indian Museum has been a big supporter and partner for this event for many years. And then the macroinvertebrate station. In a typical year, we would also have CPW out doing fish shocking, and then Trout Unlimited doing fly tying. That just requires some really specialized knowledge and skills that we kind of had to plan around for this year. We are doing this event this spring as just a half day instead of a full day program. So the one day of in-person Cottonwood Days we have this spring is the afternoon of May 11th. And we have a group from Paonia Middle School coming out. Those are our 2 spring field trips. And like I said earlier, we do have the curriculum packets for those. We have sample scripts, as well as just sort of everything you need to know if you were to be running that station. I think this year would be a nice year for a new volunteer, just since it'll be such a small group size, very manageable in terms of the quantity of students running around. In typical years, we would have a much higher number of students out, and we do hope to get back to that point eventually. We are unsure what the fall is going to look like at this point, with how many students we're able to take out at a time. But this is kind of an abnormality this spring of doing Cottonwood Days. It is typically a late September field trip. Does anybody have questions at this point before we kind of get into Leslie's portion?
For Nature Knowledge Days, you mentioned 2 of the days are only 1 session. Which days were those? I don't recall you saying, or I missed it or something.
No, that's okay. So April 5th is the first day of it, and we just have 1 group in the morning. April 6th, we have morning and afternoon. Then April 13th, we have 1 group in the afternoon, and the 14th is morning and afternoon.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and so in the form that we sent out that I put in the chat, you know, if you express interest in volunteering for one of those, I'm going to end up following up with the people who sign up for or who express interest in the education volunteering, and we can kind of talk more dates and times and specifics then. Okay, well, I will hand it over to Leslie for kind of the teaching style that we try to embody when we're out on the land.
Thanks, Annie. Thank you all for sticking around this evening. This is going to be your actual volunteer training for Colorado Canyons Association. I have a slide with some touch points, things that we'll talk about, and I'll go into a little more detail. Again, I'm going to move through this information, so if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or we can do a question and answer at the very end. So Colorado Canyons Association Education Volunteer, we have some considerations for delivering some high quality content, making sure that it's an engaging presentation to any student, any age group. And there's just a couple things that I wanted to go over with you to make it a great presentation, but also enjoyable for you as a volunteer as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is just knowing your audience and being able to teach to your audience. As I think Helly mentioned earlier, Sarah and Annie have all mentioned, the content that you would be teaching or presenting is very well laid out for you. There are a few other things that you can do to make the presentation go smoothly. So gaining important information about your group in advance would be just another piece to the puzzle to make everything go a little more smoothly. So what I mean by that is maybe preparing yourself by gaining important information about that group. So group size would be important, whether or not your students are eager to participate. Sometimes they really like the content. Sometimes they want to throw rocks or sand at their friends. So just knowing how to manage those things. And I'm going to give you a little background. I've been a 6th grade math and science teacher for years. volunteers. And so it's just seeing one step ahead of what you've got coming at you can make it a more enjoyable experience for you as well as the other kids that are there at the program. So whether or not they're excited to be there, what their distractions might be. So understanding what some students might be into while they're out there on the land, and then being aware of any particular circumstances that might make a student's trip out to the NCAs more enjoyable. So maybe we need to make different accommodations for some students, understanding that your group knows where a bathroom is before we begin. A lot of times we're out there, all day and we're rotating and kids forget things like water bottles or what have you. So those are some good things to keep in mind. Knowing the age range of the students that you're going to be working with is really important for the content, but also for yourself and your experience. I know that I am not a kindergarten teacher, so I probably wouldn't sign up for a kindergarten program. I know that 12-year-olds are my jam, and I really like talking with middle schoolers. So I might choose to do something that's a little more my comfort level, working with students on some of these volunteering opportunities. And then some of the other things, maybe you have to modify your lesson. And these are things that would, maybe we would have to do something like that because a bus is late and we have a shortened time frame. Volunteers maybe haven't showed up, whatever the circumstances might be, you might have to make those accommodations. And it's just good to know, and being able to modify those things in advance is just a good thing to have in your back pocket. Continuously reviewing objectives throughout the day re-engages kids if they feel or you see that they're unengaged. So asking the question of, can you give me some information back, or asking those deeper questions about knowledge that you have just imparted on students to check for understanding and also just re-engage if needed. And then sometimes it's cool to have an exit ticket or to have a ticket out the door. So it's, your ticket to get in somewhere, but in this case, to go to the next station. Tell me one thing you just learned, or act out something that you have just learned about, something like that. So teaching to your audience, that's the first step. The next step is classroom management. Again, this is just kind of staying one step ahead of your group, making sure that you are prepared for any of those fun things that might occur when they are in your hands. And so that might look like preparation for making a smooth presentation, things like attention grabbers, instructional support. This is a nice way to say we don't have time for stories right now, but do you have a question or a story? And call on a student that has the question, not the story. And then if we have time at the end and time for stories, great. And then adapting on the fly. This also is, it falls kind of in all categories, teaching to your audience as well as classroom management. And I did learn a new attention grabber recently, and I really like this one. So instead of I need your help, which I've used in the past, here we go, or timeout, there's one where you can say waterfall and everybody says to you, shh. And so it's a hand motion, but it's also a thing that you have to do with this part of your body, and it gets the attention really well. But I love that one, so keep that one in your back pocket. So attention grabbers, everyone should be engaged and available to support your instructor. So sometimes, I know we've mentioned, if you're new to this, teaching can be a little scary, and it can be really fun, but you've got to figure out, kind of what that balance is for yourself. Sometimes it makes more sense to go with another volunteer or shadow in an event to lessen your anxiety about the program, but also be able to see how something should be taught. So you're not going into it blind the first time. And that can really help with classroom management. If you're confident with what you're teaching and where you're going with the lesson, students can read that pretty well. And so sometimes that helps with your classroom management piece, just having that kind of, that control. Don't be afraid to stop if you've got a class that's unruly or out of control. There's no reason to yell over students. You should have their attention. If you don't, again, call for help. There's no problem with stepping out or letting somebody else take control of that situation or come to talk to a group of kids. But there's no reason why you should be treated disrespectfully while coming out to volunteer for a lesson. So I do want to put that out there. It's okay to stop your lesson to regain focus for those students. Reviewing the classroom expectations again before moving on. So you may set expectations for yourself. I do when I teach outside. I do in my classroom, and they tend to overlap. So just because you're outside, or outside of a classroom, or you're riding in a bus, those things still apply. It's still very respectful. It's still something that you're going to want to maintain. Just because we're in an outdoor setting doesn't mean it should be louder, or it doesn't also mean that, there should be, running, or just whatever your parameters are, or whatever you put in place as your classroom management, as your things to keep people safe and engaged. That's okay. Just make sure you put those out there in advance, so that students have the expectations and they know what you're trying to do, and what you're trying to focus on. Classroom management is not it. It's always something that happens in the background, but it makes a program run pretty smoothly as well. If you need help with that, please reach out to me at any time with any of these 3 topics that we're going to discuss today, and I'd be happy to walk through some of the other tricks of the trade that I have for you. We may not talk about them tonight, but I'm absolutely happy to talk more with you about those things. Let's see. Yeah, and then making sure that, that question or story portion, make sure that you can ask students, do you want them to raise their hands if they have questions? Do you want them to popcorn out and just give answers out loud without waiting for that point to speak? How would you like them to interject, and how would you like them to communicate with you? That's also important. And again, that's your style. So you're going to want to make sure that you put those rules out there first for students, so they have guidelines and they know how to respectfully engage with you or other students in the group. Also, that takes the wasting time portion away, and it makes it more engaging and more meaningful for students. So keep that in mind. Another good thing to remember is you might want to carry some sticky notes around with you. Again, I have plenty of these things, and we can create a kit for this type of stuff. But when you're out in the field, there might be a question that comes up that maybe you don't have an answer to, but that somebody at the event might have an answer to. So if the question is written down on a sticky note, we call that a parking lot. And maybe we'll put it up on the side of, a whiteboard or something, and get to it afterwards. So saying, yeah, this question is important. We're going to get to the question. We may not have an answer right now, but we will before the end of the event, or maybe we'll email you back with an answer. Those things are fine. You do not have to know everything. You do not have to have an answer every time there's a question being asked. So just keep that in mind. Also, we can always get back with students and follow up with questions that they might have. Sometimes you might have to adapt what you are teaching, like we talked about earlier, just because of time management or weather, any of those things. So be prepared to kind of spin on a dime if need be, and then always keep a timer or some kind of time schedule for yourself. It's important to go over your curriculum ahead of time. And it's okay to talk in the mirror and time how long it takes you to say something. It always tends to be shorter when you're doing it in front of a group for whatever reason. And sometimes you end up with that extra 5 or 10 minutes at the end where no one has a question. If you take the time to kind of pace yourself and pace out what your programming looks like, it's easier to do that a second time in the field when you have an audience. So that's another helpful tip. And let's see here. I'm going to ask does anyone have any questions at this point in time? Or I can go right to my third point and then we can talk at the end. But does anyone have any pressing questions right now with those first 2 topics? Okay. And then the last part is representing Colorado Canyons Association and other partnerships. So Colorado Parks and Wildlife sometimes shows up to our events. The Forest Service will be there. The BLM will be there. And I read this poem a long time ago. It was printed in 1999. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but at the very end of the poem, this is something that I just use as a motto for myself. You're going to ride for the brand. Okay. And what that means is that, you know, it means that you've got pride in yourself and your job and the land. And I think that's the most important thing. It's almost like a cowboy prayer, but those three topics just ring true to me, especially with work with Colorado Canyons Association and with the BLM and holding these NCAs so close to our hearts. So I really like that. You've got pride in yourself, your job, and the land. And so that last part there is make sure that you're doing and saying the right thing, even when no one is looking, and maintaining your composure or remaining neutral in a topic or a subject that someone brings up. A lot of times it's hard to do that, but it's a good practice in refraining. And then leave your opinion out of it. There's a good way to say that, but not a good way to say that, but keep your opinions to yourself. In the field and with teaching and things like that, it's not the time or place. And the last part to that is be proud to represent your public lands. And with that, I will take any questions that you might have. And if you want me to go into detail any further or offer any other suggestions for those three topics, please let me know. Is anyone a little nervous to volunteer as an education volunteer? Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sarah. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Leslie. And thank you for those who stuck around for the additional education training. If there are no more questions, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you to all the CCA staff who helped out with this training, all the BLM staff, and of course to all of the volunteers who showed up. Once again, don't hesitate to reach out with additional questions. Fill out that sign up form at your own time within the next couple of days, and we'll look forward to seeing your answers and getting you signed up for some of these events. All right, thank you all, and we'll see you out in our NCA soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Looking forward to it.
Bye. Thanks, guys.